Welcome back to the podcast. Today I have Davidson Hang, and we're going to be discussing people pleasing. Why? Because you're listening to this podcast and you know it's probably something you're struggling with. Davidson, thank you so much for being here. Will you share a little bit about yourself, what you do, and where you are in the world?
Sure. Thanks, Katie. Really excited to be here. So I currently live in New Jersey, so it's awesome that with technology we're able to connect. I've been in corporate for 13 years, and I recently left to start my own life coaching business. So I've been coaching on the side for 7 years now. Long story short, I spent $150,000 on seven different coaching training programs, got all the certifications, EQI, accomplishment coaching, next level, the NLP and everything, and also tried maybe seven different therapists and just went on like a healing journey. Didn't have a father. Most of my life was always people pleasing because I thought that I needed to be successful in order to be liked. Got into my dream company at LinkedIn, and then just been a fan of running workshops and really delve deep into like why people please, and really had to do a lot of meditation, a lot of soul searching on why I've been such a recovering people pleaser.
Yeah, I'm glad that you introduced this with you are a recovering people pleaser. I I love the term recovering because it also means you still struggle with it, right? Like it's still something you work through because I'm right there beside you in that. A lot of the people who are ambitious and high driven have that fear of failure, which is usually perfectionism, right? And also that fear of that, rejection, abandonment stuff that ends up getting into people pleasing. And so this is a very
Mm.
normal thing for us all to experience. And living abroad, I've noticed it's not just an American thing. People pleasing
Hmm.
culturally, and I've met women and men from many different cultures, it's a thing. It's a thing in a lot of places. So I want to talk about some reasons why, and you're going to be giving us three in specific reasons why people please. But what trends are you noticing throughout the world with people pleasing? And I'm going to throw a curveball and narcissistic people, because that's a big
Hmm.
hot term right now, right? Everybody's a narcissist. Thank you, particular president who made it a hot term. But what is going on that we're seeing a rise of people pleasers and a rise of
Hmm.
narcissists?
Hmm. I think one reason is social media, right? It's in some ways like you kind of have to show all the glamorous, like, hey, I'm on this vacation, hey, I won this award, hey, and I've been guilty of that as well, working at LinkedIn when, the whole platform literally is to promote yourself every time you get promoted, right? So,
Yeah.
once I got into LinkedIn and I understood like, oh, that's why people are playing this game. It's like, oh, okay, I have to always be a high achiever. I have to show all of my certifications, and I think social media is certainly not helping us in terms of, and the people pleasing aspect could just be like, hey, I'm getting invited to a lot of weddings and birthdays. Like I have to say yes, even though I don't feel like going. It's sort of, it will make me fit in with my tribe.
Yeah, so it's about the what we can show other people. I'm wanted, I'm needed, I'm accepted. And then also with social media, there's chances for you to get invited to more things or to be asked to
Mm,
volunteer for more things, right? Like, oh, I saw that you did
mm,
this. Can you help me with this?
mm.
Yeah, sure. Like I can totally. But so let's dive in. What are three reasons that people are people pleasing more than ever?
Yeah, and I'll just share stories because I think it's easier because I don't want to call anyone out, right? So I'll just call myself out. Being Asian American, one of it's the cultural society standards as well as like family comes first, right? A lot of the Asian culture comes from more like collective, and then my parents are from Vietnam, so a lot of that communism aspect. So, you have to sacrifice your own needs for the benefit of the family, right? So my mom calls me, it's like, hey, it's Chinese New Year next week, like you have to come back, like it'd be tough for me to say no because they'll guilt trip me on that, and that's what her parents, and what generationally that's what you've done, right? You sacrifice for the benefit of the greater good of the society. I think that's one. Number two, like social media, I really do think is another is another, like you mentioned, narcissism, right? It's oh, this makes me look good, like you said. I volunteered over 500 hours, like a lot of helping orphans in Vietnam and helping kids in the Bronx. And I'm not gonna lie, some of it was so I can post and be like, hey guys, I raised, $10,000 to help build schools in Africa, right? So there is some narcissism to that. I'll be honest, right? But I think there's a pro and con to that. And the last reason I would say is another common trend is just because, we as a society, we all want to fit in with our tribe. So if I'm fortunate, and I'm very lucky where I get invited to maybe 5 or 6 weddings a year, and I feel like I have to go or else I'm not going to be accepted by the tribe anymore, whether it's my fraternity brothers, the Asian American community, or my cousins and my aunts, right? And if I don't go to any of those, like, oh, maybe my cousins will feel like, oh, he's not as committed to the family as I am.
Oh, you just hit some heavy hitters. Okay, so very first one, the cultural plus generational card, right? Like you said it. They did this to my mom does it to me, probably done to your grandparents. Like you have to, this is for the family, this is what you do. I would agree with that. I think there is a big piece of people pleasing is a learned behavior and also a behavior of survival in a family, right? Like, I
Hmm.
need to know how to make you happy so you're not angry at me. I need to know how to make sure everybody stays in a positive mood. I'll be the clown or I'll be the hero child so that you guys don't fight or you don't leave. And so it becomes this the people pleaser kind of keeps the family going and takes care of everything
Hmm.
and doesn't rock the boat. Like, don't rock the boat.
Hmm.
And whether it's because of a cultural norm or a generational norm, it feels like we're stuck, doesn't it? Like, I have to.
Hmm. Yeah, and there's a lot of like guilt tripping as well. Luckily, my sister and I are older now. And now we're able to set better boundaries. But you do feel bad sometimes, right? If my mom's calling me every week, right, and I only accept 2 out of the 5 calls, you kind of feel bad, right? You're like, hey, like I really miss you guys. Like, it's been so long since I've seen you, and to your point, there is that cultural, like, because her mom, my grandma lives with my mom, right? So for her it's like almost like it's almost like expected. Like luckily with it's a weird dynamic in America where our generation, some of my friends like parents live with them but not always, but it is common, like even with my wife, her family's from Hong Kong, their parents live with them pretty much their whole lives, right? So it is sort of a weird dynamic. Being caught in the middle of being like Asian American comes with its own nuances.
Mhm. How do you help people as you're coaching them or when you're speaking on stages about this with the guilt? Because I think those who
Hmm.
want to work on people pleasing, they haven't figured out how to cope with the guilt that comes with the boundaries.
Yeah, one of my clients, he's a very successful. He's in investment banking right now, right? And for context, his parents are from Taiwan. So it's interesting because all of our coaching calls are usually like this, like, oh, I'm so exhausted. I've worked 80 hours this week. I'm like, well, what, do you like your job? Like, why are you working 80 hours a week? Well, it's like, well, my parents like sacrificed a lot. Like, they paid this some $30,000 to get into, to get into Toronto, Canada. They paid for this visa. They paid for expensive attorney fees. And the least and they paid for $150,000 worth of my education. Like the least I could do is, be able to repay them. And it's like, oh, interesting. And I said, so let's say fast forward 20 years, you look like you're 70 years old because you're working 80 hours a week. Like, do you really think they'll be happy? Like, that's actually what they want for you? Like, no, probably not. It's like, okay. And then next week, still at the investment banking job, right? It's like, it's
Yeah.
it's like the cultural conditioning is so strong that it takes time for them to unpack those layers.
Yeah, so it's almost like recognizing guilt is part of the process and challenging the belief systems around what's causing the guilt. Like you said, okay, but if you end up being miserable and having health issues and mental health issues, like
Mhm.
in however many years, is it really going to be worth it? And are they going to be like
Mm.
so happy and proud? And you're like, no, probably not. Okay. But you're right. It doesn't mean next week I've quit the job. It just means
Right.
I'm learning to think differently about why I'm working or how
Mm.
I'm working or what's my why basically. Now you mentioned
Yeah.
the second reason was about social media, right? Like there is that sense of wanting to make sure other people see that you're not alone, that you're wanted and needed and things like that. So when we have a driver like that, whether it be because you only grew up with one parent or I've worked with clients who were orphaned as children, and so there's just this feeling of like needing to prove that they are wanted and desired and loved.
Mm.
How can we start to fulfill that for ourselves so we stop looking for it
Mm.
externally?
Ah, that's a really good question. I think that's like everyone struggles with this, like whether you're an orphan or not, right? For me, for instance, I took a 16-day solo road trip earlier this month, and I did that for me, right? It was most people would be like, well, that's crazy. Like I would never be able to do that. I have responsibilities, I have a job, etc., right? But a lot of it, when I ask people, well, why haven't you done a road trip? Because people always message me like, oh, I always wanted to do a road trip, especially because I was posting every day. And well, I say, well, why haven't you? And they usually say, well, they make up some sort of like cultural or societal expectation, right? It's like, well, to be a good dad, like I have to like be there for my kids, right? So there's always a reason, and usually that reason is because we want to please our spouses or our parents or our bosses or employers, right? But never do I hear people say they do it for themselves, right? And sometimes people do it later on when their kids are in college, but it's like I would rather do it now when I'm younger as opposed to when I'm like 56 and I might not have as much energy.
Yeah. So we are so worried about pleasing other people, we don't take the time to please ourselves, and we're kind of
Yeah.
draining ourselves by doing that.
Yeah.
So I'm what I'm hearing you say really, especially like taking that journey and taking that trip, and even if you can't take over 2 weeks away, like even a weekend away, is how
Yeah.
much it fills your cup back up to be of service and helpful to other people, right? So it's
Mm.
like almost seeing it as equally as important as what you're doing to help other people.
Mm. Yeah, right. It's like I'm much more pleasant to be around, like with my wife. Like luckily she was also on vacation, but when we both came back, we were just so much more pleasant with each other and easier to be with each other, right? So it just that was a really nice refresher, and then you can excel even more at work or whatever you're doing to serve your community, right? But a lot of people they only they only tune out and they go on vacation when it's too late, and then by then, it's like it's going to be hard to get into a place where their cup is full.
Yeah, definitely. And remind me what your third reason we people please is, because I want to dive into that.
Um, I believe it was. I mean, I think part of it is like we need the validation of the community as
Right,
well.
the
And
tribe. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. So when we people please so that the tribe continues to accept us, right? Our community continues to
yeah,
accept us. It's going back again to putting people more ahead of our own needs. And like you mentioned,
yeah.
attending weddings, right? Fun thing. So a positive, but what if it's volunteering, and then having to volunteer more hours and more hours.
Mm,
I find with people pleasing, sometimes we say yes because we can do it, maybe really, really
mm,
good or fast at it, but that doesn't mean we have to. But we
right.
still say yes. And you're right, there's that tribe, I want to be a part of the tribe, I want to belong.
Mm.
So, what are some steps we can take to start breaking out of that?
And I think some of it's virtue signaling as well. Like I'm not gonna lie, it was nice to be like, hey guys, like I'm doing this like really cool thing. I'm helping all these orphans, but I was exhausted, right? Because I was around 9 p.m. every day is when I got done all of my like volunteering and stuff like that. So yeah, on paper it looked great, right? I had all these awards. I can add it to my LinkedIn. Like it was cool. And don't get me wrong, it was rewarding when an app like when in Malali when the person was like, hey, like, you're building these schools, like I just want to show you the progress you've made and how much of an impact. Like, don't get me wrong, like that felt amazing, right? But was it worth it did I do it like for that moment, or did I do it because I felt like like I'm overcompensating for the lack of achievements or the lack of maybe when I was younger I didn't do well in school, right? I'm not gonna lie, I think half of it was because I didn't do well in school. So I was like, all right, let me overcompensate by being really charitable, right? So it's like, was that a choice that I did or was it unconscious? In my case, it was unconscious.
Well, and it showed you're a valued member of the tribe too, right? Like, look
Yeah.
at how much I put into it. And Davidson, I'm realizing by living the lives that you and I do with how much we volunteer or help and things like that, we're almost setting other people up for failure, aren't we? Because
Mm,
we're doing things maybe in a way that they feel like I'll never be able to, and it makes them feel
hmm.
worse about themselves. So I'm wondering if our people pleasing tendencies actually ends up hurting people, which goes against the whole purpose, right? So
Yeah, that's a good point.
yeah, I mean, I think how can we start to challenge ourselves to be more realistic, to be more authentic, right?
Mm, hmm,
I think at 9 o'clock at night, I would have preferred to watch a video of you be like, I am exhausted. This isn't
mm,
cool. This isn't like, this is tough. Now, at the end of
mm,
the road, yes, there's going to be something good that comes out of it, but like,
mm,
don't think I'm smiling and it's like, look at all the kids and stuff. Like, this
mm,
is really like the real parts of it. I think that's
mm,
what's lacking on social media
hmm,
is, our desire to make it look a certain way and show that value and be that part of that tribe and not,
hmm,
I'm going to need a vacation after this because I'm exhausted.
mm. Wow, that's really deep what you just said. Yeah, to your point, I think that's why your Instagram has been doing really well, right? Because you're touching on a human emotion, right? Which is just the authenticity, and people feel like, oh, she gets me. Like, yeah, that's why this is why I'm struggling mental health wise, right? I think you're right. If we're just a little bit more conscious and more authentic, we can have these just you don't have to put on all your best makeup, right? You can just literally just take out your phone and be like, hey, like honestly, like it's been a rough week, and I know on paper, like I'm showing you like all the great things and the orphans and all this stuff, but I'm not gonna lie, like it's really taken a toll on me, and for all you other mothers out there or all of you other people that are juggling a lot of different like roles, just let you know like you're not alone. Like that would make such a bigger difference, but really it's like our polished like, oh hey, I just got this, my husband just got me this new Chanel bag, like isn't it great, he's such a good husband. And it's like, I don't know, like that's like my only thing about social media. It's like it's but I get it, I do it too, right? Like when I'm in Hawaii, it's hard for me not to like put down my phone and be like, check out this hotel, like the service is so great,
Yeah.
but I get it, like that we're just trying to fit in at the end of the day.
Yeah, definitely. And so maybe by our desire to people please or to be presented a certain way, we end up really hurting ourselves more in the long run and hurting other people. So this is a good
Yeah.
challenge, I think, to for all of you who are listening, who are people pleasing, kind of ask yourself in what ways is your people pleasing hurting other people by them not, and I've spoken about this on the podcast before, by them not getting moments of personal growth by handling disappointment and handling, it's not the way I want it to. How is your people pleasing hurting you by not having boundaries and draining your energy? And how is your people pleasing really actually not filling your cup at all, right? Like it's not actually helping you. I think those are things,
Hmm.
some good reflections. Any questions you think that people need to reflect on as they're working on people pleasing?
I, I think you're onto something, right? Like I think after we post every social media content, it's like, well, what's the purpose of this? Is this because people will accept me? Like finally, like I've made it, but in terms of like I have this beautiful house now,
Mhm.
or is the purpose of this like I think the same post, right? Let's say I post a picture of my new house. Like, I think it depends on what the context is, right? If we say, hey, like I'm so proud of myself. Like, this is someone who grew up like living off of government assistance. Like, this felt like a very big accomplishment. Like, thank you, mom, for for helping pay for my education. Thank you for my professors, et cetera, right? Like that's a different way of being versus like, hey guys, like, all right, like on to the next one. Like like, oh man, this house costs like $5.2 million, but hey guys, like don't worry. This is only the first out of 10 houses I'm gonna buy. Like, let's get it. I think there's like two different ways to look at it. I'm not saying one is better, but I think one is more intentional, more reflective, more introspective, and the other one is more like, to your point, like sometimes it probably will make other people feel bad. Like, man, I'm never gonna be like, it's not even relatable. Like, it's like, man, that guy, maybe he has something I don't have, right? Like, that's just not how I'm wired.
Right, right. It's not as inspirational sometimes as we think it might be, that it actually is kind of tearing people down. Yeah. Well, Davidson, thank you so much for sharing your insights and your own personal stories. And I think you really speak to a generation and a culture that is trying to discover boundaries when their parents and grandparents are still holding them down, going, no, 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 we have to do it this way. So I really commend you on speaking up and sharing your own personal journey of the struggles with that and being okay to have boundaries with your tribe and community while also being authentic to you still want to belong and you still want to be a part of it and you don't want to have the guilt trip. I really valued what you shared. If people want to connect with you and learn more from you, how can they do that?
Yes, yeah, I'll include a link. I'll share my link tree with you. I have a book called Unapologetically ENFP, which is one of the Myers-Briggs type assessors. We're the campaigners, so that's one way you can find out. And really the purpose of the book is how to have more fun in life, like how to not take yourself so seriously and just be able to have more adventure in life. And then I also have a book called Redefining Masculinity that from last year that is about how men should be more open with their feelings and have a healthy place to process their emotions so that we don't take.
Here's to finding our balance code.